Hey guys, it's Malachi Dawson. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for today's video. Let's get into it.
1, 2, 3.
Hey guys, it's Malachi Dawson. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, so if you guys have already read the title, you know that today's video is about the problem with the modern church today. Before I get started, I do want to say that this is not to bash any church. This is not to come against the church body. This is just something that the Lord put on my heart and I've been really wanting to share. So, first of all, I was praying the other day and the Lord told me this. He said, church isn't a show to show off your gifts. And immediately I began to think about I see a lot of churches on social media where it's more about performing well than fostering the presence of God. And so recently I've just been diving in 1 Peter, and in 1 Peter it talks about, that we are God's royal priesthood, his chosen people. And it makes me sad that God is like literally choosing us. He's saying, whenever you become my child, you are in a royal priesthood. And the fact that we often make church more about us, how can we look good on a stage, more than how can we minister unto the Lord? How can we make his name known? And so that's kind of like what this video is going to be about today. Is I just wanted to, so that's kind of what this video is going to be about today. I just wanted to talk about some of the things that the Lord directly was telling me, and it literally just blew my mind how far a lot of churches have fallen off of, or what God is calling us to do. Once again, I'm not anti-church at all. I personally love Sundays. They're my favorite days of the week. I love ministering and then also serving at my local church. And I adore churches, but I just think that there's so many churches that have gotten so far away from what God is actually calling us to do. So this is just something that, like I said, the Lord shared with me, and I'm going to share with you guys. Okay, this next part's a little bit alarming, but the Lord, whenever he first told me that, the second thing he said was, who will be the next Saul? And if you guys know in the Bible about Saul in 1 Samuel, you can go and read it for yourself. Saul was actually the king, and God chose him to be the king. But what happened was Saul became more obsessed with getting the people's attention, getting the people to like him, that he actually began to do things that God asked him not to do. He began to live in disobedience to God because he cared more about pleasing his people more than he cared about pleasing God. And so the saddest part is that, first of all, God raised up someone else to become the new king. He raised up David, because David was a shepherd. He was in the fields constantly ministering unto the Lord, spending time with God. He had that history with God built, and God favored him because of that. But Saul, on the other hand, was doing things completely out of disobedience to God. And so what happened was, the saddest thing is in, I believe it's in 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, the two books of the Bible, it talks about this, is that Saul lived in so much disobedience that the Spirit of God left Saul. And I remember whenever I read that, it broke my heart, because Saul had lived in so much disobedience that he'd actually turned his heart away from God. And it's scary, but I began to think about that whenever God said, who will the next Saul be? Then I realized that there's so many churches, there's so many public ministers that I see on social media that have the same thing going on, that they actually are catering more to people more than they are to God. And so I began to realize, a lot of churches often cater to the audience more than they care about catering unto the Lord. And so then that made me think of, okay, God, there are churches that have Sauls that are running their ministry, but I know that God's raising up Davids. And so then the Lord began to kind of reveal to me that there is actually a whole new generation of Davids, ones that had no intention of being the king. They just wanted to be with God, but then God elevated them. And I even think about, I'm reading in Proverbs right now, personally in my Bible reading, and how the Lord actually wants to be involved in our government. He wants to be involved in all kind of areas of the church. And the thing is, God says whenever a ruler or a king is submitted unto God, God gives them wisdom. Not wisdom of this world, but godly wisdom that will produce riches, that will produce favor and things like that. So what that means is that if you are in a position of leadership, you have to be submitted unto God, because he gives you wisdom that is not from this earthly realm. He gives you supernatural kingdom wisdom. And I think that's something that we have to realize and say, if I am in ministry, if I'm actively serving, I have to be rooted in God. And so the thing is, I think that way too many people are actually looking for validation, looking for the applause of the crowd more than they're looking for the applause and approval of God. Because the truth of the matter is, whenever you have a quiet time with God and you thank God, you praise him for who he is and what he's doing, whenever you're in that place with God, he affirms who you are. And if you let God affirm you in private, you'll never have to go seek validation in public. And so you won't get on a stage looking for applause. That means that you're not going to just preach ear-itching messages that are going to get a lot of applause. People should not be leaving church feeling like, okay, I'm comfortable in my sin, I'm okay if I'm sinning. No, you are called to teach the Bible, not preach a word that's just going to get a lot of applause. That's so far from what God is calling us to do. And something that I also want to talk about that the Lord revealed to me is this. I think that the enemy really tries to tempt ministers with pride, because the Lord actually revealed this to me. The devil was kicked out of heaven because of pride. So he wants ministers to also fall into the pride so that they will be rejected by God the same way that the enemy was. So ministers, if you are falling into a place where you think that you're good without God, you can talk about him but not actually know him, then the enemy may be using you for pride and tempting you to fall into pride. Because I feel like the enemy tries to get us in our head believing that we're okay. We don't need God to do what we have to do. We don't need God to lead a worship set. We don't need God to preach. And if he can get you to think that, then he can get you to think that you're okay with your own abilities. And I just want to say, for anyone that's in ministry that's fallen into that God puts you in that position, and he can so easily take you out of that position as well. And so we have to realize that the enemy's goal is that he wants people to fall into pride. He wants people to start having a prideful mind, prideful thoughts about themselves, thinking that they're holier than thou, you know. And so whenever I was praying about that, it really just broke my heart. And then God spoke to me. He said, I beg of you, don't turn your face from me. Show up daily to encounter me. And so I just want to encourage any person that's in ministry, show up for God. Show up. A pastor that I really admire, and he came and ministered at my church. He said, before I ever minister to people, I always minister unto the Lord. So like before worship or even during worship, I will just sit before the Lord and thank him and ask him to fill me. And one of the things that I really love that my dad actually speaks on, and then even like he's ingrained that in my head. My dad is a Apostle JoJo Dawson. Anyways, one of the things that he's ingrained in me is that whenever I pray before a service, I say, God, don't let them hear me, let them see you. Like, God, I don't want them to see me. I don't want them to think, oh, she's a good word, she's a good preacher, she's a good speaker, she's a good communicator. I want them to see you through me, God. Like, I'm just a vessel. And I think about it like, where I've fallen. You can watch my testimony on YouTube about how the enemy did get me in a position where sometimes I was having prideful thoughts about myself, and luckily the Lord delivered me from that and cleared up my mind. But there was points in my life where I've fallen into that, and I had to realize that God put me in this position. Like, I have a ministry called The Move in my hometown, and there was a point, and I was like, I've really done so good, like, for running this ministry by myself. And then I began to realize that it was never me. Like, God gave me the idea, God gave me the people, God gave me the resources, God gave me all the messages I've preached. It is not me. I'm just a vessel. Like, I think about it like a battery. Like a flashlight. Without the batteries, it's nothing. It has the shape to accomplish its goal, to shine the light, but without the batteries, it's nothing. And in that same way, we can be an empty vessel, but without God, we're nothing. And we have to realize that. The last thing I want to share with you guys is this. You have to love the presence of God more than you love a stage. And I beg of you, if you're in ministry, you need to fall so in love with God and his presence that you could care less about a stage. That whenever you minister, whenever you lead worship, whenever you serve, whenever you speak a message, that it should just be overflow of your time with the Lord. So I hope this video encouraged you guys. if you have any questions, you can DM me in the description box down below. There's my Instagram, Facebook, things like that, ways that you can contact me. You can email me. You can even go in the comment section down below and request any other videos. I hope this video encouraged you guys. I love you guys. Bye.